everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you guys are dialing in from. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Maximize OR Utilization and Accelerate Surgical Case Growth, St. Luke's Innovations in Automation. On behalf of Becker's Healthcare, welcome and thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I will walk through a few housekeeping instructions for our attendees today. So first and foremost, if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, you can type those into the Q&A box that you see on your screen. You'll also find a few other engagement tools on your dashboard, so please check out our resources section and also make sure you fill out our session survey. We will have a poll question happening during today's webinar, so when we get to that poll, that question will pop up in your slides box and you'll be able to submit your answers directly on the screen, and we appreciate your participation in advance. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event, and you can use the same link you used to log into today's webinar to access the recording. And lastly, if at any time you have trouble with the audio or video, please try refreshing your browser. You can also submit any technical questions into the Q&A box, and we are here to help. And with that, I'd like to welcome today's presenters. So first, I'd like to welcome Jane Peck. Jane is the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Clinical Services Lines at St. Luke's Hospital, Kansas City, which is one of the largest faith-based care hospitals in the region and recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the elite hospitals in the nation. Previously, Ms. Peck served as the Executive Director of Cancer Care Services at Adventist Healthcare, and she also held roles in cardiovascular and oncology services at HCA Midwest Research Medical Center and Overland Park Regional Medical Center. Ms. Peck holds a Master's of Arts in Organizational Leadership from Ashford University. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. David Atashru. Dr. Atashru is the Managing Director of Perioperative Business at Cuvetti, where he has led the design and development of the new Cuvetti perioperative solution, in addition to other product and clinical operations roles at the company. He holds a doctorate in medicine from the University of Missouri-Columbia and trained in plastic surgery at the University of Kentucky before completing his postdoctoral fellowship at Stanford University School of Medicine. In addition to his role at Cuvetti, Dr. Atashru continues his clinical practice at the University of California, San Francisco. And we are so excited to have both Jane and Dr. Atashru today. And for today's agenda, we have a great session lined up. So first, we'll hear from the speakers about their organizations and the challenges that leading health systems face with perioperative services. Then we'll segue into a demonstration of the new solution helping to drive perioperative growth and access. And finally, we'll hear about the impact that this strategy has at St. Luke's and other leading healthcare organizations. And at the end, we will save time for about 10 minutes for audience Q&A, so please feel free to chat in your questions anytime throughout today's webinar. So without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Jane from St. Luke's. Jane, thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. And I would like to give everyone a brief introduction to the St. Luke's Health System as we get started today. We are a faith-based, not-for-profit, integrated health system serving the Kansas City region. We've grown as a system over the years and now have 16 hospitals in Kansas and campuses, and our service area covers 67 counties in Missouri and Kansas. Our metropolitan area has a population of about over 2 million people. We have over 12,000 incredibly talented, dedicated employees within our health system, and our operations yields about approximately $1.6 billion in net patient revenue annually. Our health system mission is the best place to get care and the best place to give care. So we are highly focused on providing the absolute highest quality of care for our patients, and we also lead out with a culture of kindness, caring deeply about our employees who help us in this mission. I'll note that we also use Epic as our EHR across the system, and we've worked diligently to maximize the value of that investment. St. Luke's Hospital, Kansas City, which is the hospital that I'm the Chief Operating Officer in, is our flagship hospital in the health system. We are the regional destination for tertiary and quaternary care with a secondary service area of about 150 miles. We have a large perioperative services here at St. Luke's Hospital, Kansas City. We have 3 OR areas spread across 3 separate towers. We have a cardiovascular tower, a neuroscience tower, and then a main tower. And I will note that during the COVID and also now through our staffing shortages, we are not fully utilizing all of our ORs because of the staffing challenges that we're facing. And similar to many hospitals, our perioperative cases are a significant contributor to the volume. And what's more, we are in a highly competitive market with a number of regional players. For example, HCA has a large presence here. We have a large academic medical center here in Kansas City as well. And given our health system strategy and these competitive dynamics, we have really focused to prioritize our strategies around the perioperative services. So let me take just a few moments to tell you about the challenges we faced here at St. Luke's. I anticipate that when you hear these challenges, they won't be a surprise to you. I'm sure many of you are facing similar experiences. First, we needed to accommodate the growing demand for care. We are the premier destination for tertiary and quaternary care in the region, and so we needed to be able to accommodate more cases while improving utilization, optimization, and efficiency at the same time. Next, we needed to be able to do more with less. Like many of you, we've experienced a very challenging environment due to COVID with a backlog of cases and now a staffing shortage among the healthcare environment. As a result of the staffing challenges, we actually had to reduce the number of ORs that were running in our main tower, going from 11 down to 9. We couldn't let these challenges really slow us down, as you know, it is a main revenue driver for our hospital. So it's been more important than ever that we optimize how we are using our resources and staffing. Additionally, we needed to strengthen our margins. Our perioperative services are vital to our hospital and the health system's bottom line, and we needed to improve our margins so that we can continue to invest in the system and continue on our mission to provide the highest quality care for our patients. Finally, so many patients deferred care, and there is a huge backlog of cases, as well as patients are coming in sicker and needing more surgeries. Our surgeons are very hungry right now to get back into our ORs, and they are working to secure time beyond their normal block allegations as they're trying to address the demand coming into their clinics. And in the past, we've tried various approaches in optimizing our surgical services area. We've, changed policies. We have certainly used our EHR as much as possible. But in the situation we are in today, we actually felt like we needed to think outside the box and really go with a more innovative approach. So to address and solve some of these key challenges that we decided to partner with Cuvetti, and we've actually seen a significant impact so far, and it's leading to some really, really good results within our surgical services area. We've seen an improvement in our access to the OR time. We have improved our patient satisfaction. We've improved our staff satisfaction. We are meeting and on certain months exceeding our budgeted volumes despite staffing headwinds that we're facing and reduced OR rooms. And while we have been hit hard with the staffing challenges and have had to run fewer ORs, we've been able to do more cases in that reduced footprint. And since we have actually partnered with Cuvetti and launched the tool, we've actually added 920 cases through using the Cuvetti solution. We've also seen an increase in our OR block release lead time, which I really feel has been significant in helping us as we are growing our case volume. So let me tell you a little bit about the approach and what led us to Cuvetti. So about 2 years ago, I was starting to get feedback from our surgeons related to frustrations that they were having in surgical services. They were concerned about the throughput. They were concerned about not being able to get cases on our OR schedule. And ultimately, every conversation would lead to we needed to open up more OR rooms. And so based upon the feedback that I received, we actually engaged our project management office in early 2020 to look at new ways to address the efficiency and the optimization in our OR space. And based on the early findings, we identified the need to improve case scheduling accuracy and optimize the OR schedule for the OR rooms. One of the biggest complaints was about the inefficiencies trying to get cases on the schedule, which was ultimately leading to you don't have enough ORs, add more OR rooms. And so many blocks were going unused as a result. Once we identified this as being a big friction point for our surgeons, we actually explored the idea of creating a bot that would interact with our surgeons and our schedulers to help them to be able to identify open times on our schedule and ease that friction point for them. So as many of you may have encountered with your own IT department, as so much work is in the digital space, we approached our IT department about this, but unfortunately they didn't have the bandwidth to really support this idea that we had for surgical services. So ultimately we realized this was really an important friction point that we really needed to address as we were working to optimize, our scheduling and really optimizing the running of the rooms. And so we joined with Cuvetti and a group of other innovative health systems to build the solution together. I'll next let David tell you more about how that works. David?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I really appreciate you sharing some of your experience. It's just been an absolute privilege to work with St. Luke's Health System. So St. Luke's joined us as one of the several of our early partners in what we call an innovation cohort, which is the first wave of clients that go live on a new solution. And the reason we do that is to ensure that the products we build cover a diverse range of partner needs and use cases. And then throughout that process, we wanted to make sure that the job for schedulers and OR leaders became more manageable, and the health system leaders saw progress towards what their strategic goals were. Once planning and configuration were complete, we then invest heavily in training and monitoring to ensure that the solution was working as we intended and tracking towards the desired outcomes for each innovation cohort partner. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about that, but before we jump in, I think helpful to tell you a little bit more about Cuvetti. So I'll let you advance the slide there, Abby. Perfect. So first, just some quick background on Cuvetti. We partner with the leading health systems and hospitals to automate care operations. We specialize in combining modern innovations such as AI and ML and behavioral science with then a deep expertise in healthcare across clinical operations, PI, and change management, with the goal of simplifying how healthcare operates, which as a clinician, I can really identify with. And then what we do is we have a complete system for helping you to automate the operations. That includes real-time automation platform, best practice solutions for the inpatient setting and the ED and the perioperative environment and command center, and then a team of clinical operations experts to help implement the technology and actually drive outcomes. And then finally, I think we're really proud to say that we're a proven partner. We've worked with a lot of the leading health systems and demonstrated success in a way that we feel really prideful in. So as we approach the perioperative space, what we heard repeatedly from operational leaders is that they were in what we'd call like a perfect storm. And again, as a surgeon, I've seen this from the beginning of my training till now without much change really. And it's the same thing with very little change, 20 years on. And the thing is, places that are successful at navigating these issues do so on the backs and many times at the expense of their high-performing teams. It's not sustainable, it's not right, and what we knew is that there had to be a better way to do this. And with that as a background, let's take a quick poll from all of you on your biggest challenges. I think it'd be just helpful to see here. So as Abby brings up the poll, please select all the challenges that you experience at your organization. So I'll give folks a few seconds to complete this, but I think it'll be nice to just see what that looks like across the org. So I'll pause for 15 to 20 seconds and then we'll take a look.
Thanks, David. And yeah, just as a reminder for attendees, the poll should pop up in your slide box, so feel free to take a look, read the responses, and then select all that apply to your organization and your role, and then we'll be able to chat through results shortly. All right, we'll give folks a couple more seconds to get their selections in. All right, let's take a look at the results.
Yeah, let's see here. So maybe not too surprising, and actually one that I would identify with, staffing shortages and then filling the white spaces on the schedule being two of the top ones. And then I think kind of equivalent with that, just the manual work that's involved in coordination. I think that's pretty common and consistent across the partners we've seen. And look, I think that's stuff that we really want to help with. And so it's exciting to see that as people have mentioned that across the screen. So I think that leads us to kind of how we approach this. As I think about all the amazing technology in my personal life, think about all the technology in your own personal life that you've come to expect and rely on. The thing that really stands out to me is, why shouldn't you expect to have that same technology available in your professional life? At home, we're able to quickly look up all our options for travel within seconds online. Do this every day. Then machine learning suggests with high accuracy what movies we might be interested in, watches and it learns as our tastes evolve over time. Apparently now, I love to watch Disney films because I got 2 young kids and I get a lot of those sent to me. And then the AI helps with airlines manage yield optimization so their flights stay on time and they're profitable and airfares stay low for everyone, like myself. And then finally, marketing automation. It's helping actively help businesses grow and reducing the burden on their teams. The question we're really asking ourselves is, what if these concepts were able to be applied to the perioperative space? As we kind of pulled back and look at this, what we said was, what if instead of accepting the hurricane, we could make a meaningful stride to a perioperative paradise? And I think in that future state, that's where you can find OR time in seconds at the click of a button. We can automatically increase volume and utilization without adding new staff or operating rooms or purchasing new equipment, where you can help patients get into the OR sooner, where we can give surgeons and key stakeholders instant access to real-time data on their performance and their improvement opportunities. And that is what we've built in partnership with St. Luke's and our other innovation partners. And so now I'm kind of excited to show you kind of how that works and what that looks like. So I think the key thing to achieving this vision was the 10 years Cuvetti had invested upfront in building the right data and application architecture, all of which comes together in the Cuvetti automation platform. This is the architecture that's consistent across all our solution areas, and it's actually what enables us to develop and deploy new interventions and achieving the results for our partners, and I think most importantly, delighting the end users. I'll share some examples of the things that we built for St. Luke's in a moment, but this platform starts by ingesting historical data from the EHR to train our machine learning models. And Abby, if you can advance to slide 1. And then provide the information with real-time insights. And then we're also able to write information back to the EHR. And that's what would be the bidirectional piece that's crucial for reducing burden on the OR teams and eliminating the extra clicks and steps in the workflow. And then to augment the EHR data, we also bring in proprietary data sets, such as longitudinal claims data sets for 310 million patients on a monthly refresh, to help our partners compete and then navigate in the market. And then with this foundation in place, the core of the solution is a symbiotic relationship between creating access and driving growth. The products we've built use behavioral science principles to create additional access in the OR, and then automate the volume growth by strategically filling the schedule with AI-driven workflows. So as volume increases, the demand for more access increases. And that creates what we think of as an engine for the peri-op solution. But then I think the real reality is that technology in a vacuum doesn't go far enough to solve the challenges. You need process improvement. You need people on the ground and real-time insights to support the end users to achieve the performance gains they're looking for. So our OR Insights module supports the process improvements, makes these advances sustainable, and highlights areas for future improvement. And finally, the picture is not complete without actually understanding what's going on outside the 4 walls of your health system. And to that end, it's incredibly important and necessary to inform decision-making and catalyze growth for surgeons by integrating the most recent market data possible. And so to that end, the Market Insights module highlights practice growth opportunities for surgeons, identifies competitive performance for the health system leaders, and it does a lot more than that. And for my surgical and business development colleagues, this is the part that's really exciting. It is something that is only available for the Cuvetti solution for your surgeons. And I think the last part here is like, now that we kind of understand that platform, what I'd love to do is kind of think about how we've approached these problems holistically, getting us to the future state. So what I'd like to jump into is a quick demo of the product. And so I'll take over the screen share right now. Give me 1 second to pull that up.
And while he's doing that, as a reminder to attendees, we do have additional resources on your dashboard for related content and materials, so make sure you're checking that out. And then also feel free to continue to use that Q&A. We have some great questions coming in, and we'll make sure we have save some time at the end for your questions.
Abby, can you see my screen?
We can. We're ready to go.
All right, we got it. Perfect. So just to start out, when we approach the problem of access, we first asked ourselves, how could we enable an intelligent machine to help manage your block, with the goal of accelerating release times by an average of at least 7 days? We imagined what it would look like to not to have to rely on your surgeons to remember to release, which I'll be very honest, it's not top of mind for me, and I'm sure you've experienced this. And then, but also not to force your schedulers to call and request to release blocks with no data to support the ask and no incentive to offer in return, which is incredibly hard on them. So the solution we built was a machine learning algorithm. It's tailored to the block time that's always on, predicting when was the first moment that we can predict with confidence that a surgeon or service might have time that they won't actually use. Now, I think really importantly, no surgeon wants to do this. So the key to getting this to work isn't just the ML, but how we leverage behavioral science. So if you look on the right side of your screen, here's an example. And this is delivered as an email to a surgeon's office, to the surgeon and or their scheduler that they can access on their mobile phone or they can access in their email. And so here's what you're seeing here. In this case, Dr. Osborne receives a prompt 17 days out from surgery, because that's the first moment that the algorithm can predict with confidence that he had a block that he may not need. But notice how we don't just ask the scheduler to release the time. We give them a reason why. We're trying to allay the fear that a surgeon has about releasing time that they actually end up needing. And in this case, you see it right there at the bottom. It's a prediction in the moment that there's only a 12% chance that they will need this time. I am not going to bother a surgeon about time that I think he's going to use. And that is crucial. You do not want to create alert fatigue for them. And then the other part of it is what we call the incentive. So look at that right there in the middle. That's the direct benefit to them of taking action in the moment. It's what we call a reward in behavioral science principles, which in this case is a 6% bump, or actually in this case 11% bump in their utilization, which is really important for the surgeon to actually know, like, what do I get for this in the moment? It's also really important for transparency to help them know where they're at. Now, what that reward is configurable. We could change that to what makes the most sense and actually drives the most action. Then in a single click, the surgeon's office can take action and communicate their intention directly back to the OR, which closes the loop and releases the time back to the grid. We could talk about how this works with service time block as well, which I think is really important, and that's how we have that check with my team option there. What we found at one of the partners, though, is that we were automating 89 of these release reminders a month, releasing somewhere between 50 to 100 hours of block time per month at an average of 21 days out from the block date. And because of the other parts of the solution, which we'll talk about in a minute, we're able to drive utilization of that release time up to 70%. Jane, anything you might add here?
I was sitting here thinking as you were talking, David, to me, the release of the block has been a critical component, and honestly was what was kind of motivating us to think innovatively, because the farther out you can release block, the more of an opportunity a surgeon has to put patients in that block. And releasing 3 days is not sufficient. What we've learned here is a minimum of 2 weeks. And when you get to that 2-week mark, surgeons are able to adjust schedules. They are able to get patients prepared for surgery, which is outside of their allotted block time. I think that that was the filling in the white space for us, which was our challenge.
Yeah. And we'll get to that part in the next, which is like a great segue, Jane. So I think the next part of that is growth. right? We talked about access and growth working together in tandem. You've created the access, now what? And that's where we asked ourselves, now that we had this available time, how might we develop an algorithm, a true ML algorithm that's local and learning to recruit strategic cases to fill gaps in your schedule with the goal of adding 1 to 2 cases per OR per month. And I think this is critical here. This is flipping the script. Instead of being passive in waiting for time to come and then filling it on a first come, first served basis, this is pushing that time out actively to the surgeons who would be the most strategic to fill that time. And that's what we built here with this algorithm that we call available time outreach. It's a machine learning algorithm that's looking for any time there's an open block or a late release or a late cancellation and predicting who are the surgeons that are actually the best fit for that time against our prediction of their availability and then your specific specification of strategic goals. And then one by one, it reaches out to the next best matched surgeon until it fills the slots. And that's what we're seeing here. As soon as this robotic time becomes available on 11/25, 4 weeks out, the algorithm is strategically prioritizing outreach, in this case, to Dr. Hamilton's scheduler. And so we're not waiting to see if a case happens to come or taking whatever case happens to come next. We're actively going out and getting the best case. And that's reducing that Tetris game that OR schedulers are having to play on a daily basis. And it's also recruiting the case that's actually the best fit for that time. So this may be a colorectal surgeon that you're trying to align with, but doesn't have enough block time, but you really want them to book in this robotic space. They should be first to get this. And look at, again, the behavioral signs here. The slot may get filled at any time, but we'll wait 4 hours before we notify the next best match surgeon. Then it drives action there. They're able to click all out of case, and in one click, indicate their intention, and the loop is closed with the OR, who gets an automated response back to them, so they can get a case on, and they're directed rightly into our interface to book a case. And as surgeons interact with the product, adding cases or indicating that time doesn't work with the buttons below, the algorithm is learning, again, a learning model, real machine learning, getting better and better at targeting times to them. In this instance, if you didn't want the time, it automatically then gets marketed again to the next best match surgeon. But even more than the new volume, it's how it makes the surgeons in their offices feel, especially for those early career surgeons, the ones you're trying to align with. It's showing them that the OR is working hard for them, doing everything they can to get them on the schedule, showing that this perception of scarcity is not real. There is time available and available for them to fill. Jane, would love your kind of thoughts and comments on this piece.
You know, in thinking about the growth component of this, and I've shared this story with the Cuvetti team in the past, and it's still happening. I remember when we first ran into the staffing shortages and we had to make the tough decision to reduce OR rooms, but we're just trying to retain the staff we have and not overburden them. We truly expected that, we wouldn't meet our targeted volumes. Our revenue would be down because we made this reduction in rooms. We ended up getting our monthly reports, our financial reports, our volume reports, and our volumes did not go down. Our revenue was actually higher. And I mean, the first thing I said to our business manager was, do you think this has anything to do with our Cuvetti software? And they just shook their head, yes, it has to. And it was in real time showing us how this optimization has allowed us to grow our volume without growing our rooms. And this is actually something that is repeated now on a regular basis. So it is just incredible to think that we are able to continue to grow our volumes without even opening up those additional 2 rooms yet.
Yeah, I love that, Janet. And I think that story is so emblematic of the resilience that you need to operate in the current environment, where the environment in which you are working in changes all the time. Your supply, the available rooms you have, there are all these constraints that are happening. You need that nimbleness and flexibility to have that resilience. Great. Okay, so if ATO is our push-based system, marketing the time, we also asked ourselves, how might we enable surgeons' offices to pull and find the exact time that's available across your system without ever picking up the phone? How does that give you a competitive advantage in your market, that you become the least friction and easiest place to book a case? And then what if they could actually see their colleagues' times even, that maybe the colleagues had but wouldn't let them use? And what if your independent docs had a way to do all their booking in one platform, block and open time, giving you the exact procedure information you need without ever the back and forth with faxes, with the ability to do things like reduce a bunch of the call volume and a bunch of the manual work that's happening for your OR scheduling team, or reduce the incidents that the next best thing to do is to just throw it on block time. Okay, I know it's going to be 4 months out, but that's the easiest thing to do. Or look, it's so much easier to call somewhere else to get on the schedule, so I'm not waiting on hold, I'm going to go there. We want to eliminate that and create a new process. We do that with TimeFinder. And so that's what I'd like to kind of show you here. It's a reservation-like interface that's streamlined for access outside the EHR. So any surgeon and scheduler can view and request slots. And I think the other thing to point out here is the intelligence. We'll kind of look at that and see that underneath. It's not just showing you time. Just like when you do Google search and you want that intelligence to be able to show you what's most useful to you as a top search result, that's happening here. So let's dive into that now. And I'm actually going to pull this up. So here's kind of what the interface would look like. You'd have a scheduler logging into their office. They'd sign into Cuvetti. They would come down to TimeFinder. They're starting their day. I've got one of my patients, my clinic scheduler's got, is running my clinic for me that day. She pulls me up as a surgeon at the start of clinic. She's scheduling patients for me. She's got, let's say, a robotics patient that's come in, and she knows that I'm booked out for the next 4 months in my robotic block. But she doesn't want to wait that long to get my patient in. And so instead of the process of just saying, I'm sorry, we gotta wait out, she's now clicking search. Here's what's happening. Notice also, as we kind of wait here for a second, the duration of that case is auto-populated, right? Another algorithm operating behind the scenes to create truth in scheduling that's making a prediction at the individual surgeon, individual case level to be able to actually let you know what the real time is for that case. Now for that, my clinic scheduler, she's now seeing a set of things that are really apparent to her and easily available. The first is my block time here in green, then open times here in blue, colleague time, again, which is time that a colleague of mine may have that they haven't released, but we predict they won't need. It's available here in orange. And then you got down the left-hand side here, the hospitals that I can do surgery at, the locations within those hospitals I can do surgery at, the days of the week, and the room time. And then what I'm oranging to up here is you've got the set of available times out here on the right, you got the locations and the date. Now, what my scheduler is able to do is say, okay, this is perfect. I've got here the patient in the moment, and I can say, hey, doc, I know you're available on this 5:19 and this 5:20 time. Does that work for you, patient? Yes, it does. Perfect. Let's go on and request those times. Now, the other thing that I think is really critical here not to miss, that's not immediately obvious, is look at how the times are arrayed. They're not arrayed chronologically. They're arrayed strategically based on what we predict is going to be the most useful for that scheduler. And that is critical. The reason why Google took off, twofold. Elegant interface and the best algorithms in the world surfacing to you the most useful sites for you. That's why people use it. And that same thing should be applied here. When you click search, it should be smart. There are thousands of times it could be displayed. We should prioritize at the very top of the list what's most useful for them so that they can have a better, more elegant interface to work with. The other thing is look at those Q badges, right? Just like in Google, you've got AdWords to be able to direct people's attention to what's important for them to look at. We give you the power to direct a surgeon's attention to what matters to them. You want to drive a decanting strategy? You want to drive a site of care optimization strategy? That's how you start doing this here. Make it easy for them to find the locations that you think are best fit for their cases in which to operate. And then they're able to click a next step. Here, they're able to order those based on preference for the surgeon or for the patient. They're able to indicate the true availability within the time. Maybe I got clinic in the morning and I'm not available till later in the afternoon. They're able to add any notes to the schedule that they may need. I need this trocar. And then if they're an independent, they can actually upload their procedure order forms. So they have all the fields necessary to systematize the process of collecting for them in a digitized format the patient name, the procedure description, the laterality, all the things that matter for scheduling, and then submit that to the operating room. Now, to show you kind of what this looks like on the OR side, what's wonderful for the OR is they get a work list. As soon as that goes through, it creates a set of, it's what we call an activity center, but it creates a work list for them to work in. So now I've got my OR schedulers working in a back office. They're able to say, okay, I saw the request come through. I'm going to assign it to me. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to see the request for time. I'm going to see the times that were requested. I'm able to select the time that works, and then I'm going to go ahead and approve that time, send it off to the OR. I can add any notes to them that go to them in real time. All this happening without ever them having to pick up a phone, and then giving them an electronic form that they can use to be able to get the case in to your EMR. And there's some really cool stuff that we're doing with bidirectionality as well that I think is some of like the first to be done in the business. So all that said, I think what's really exciting about this is the way in which it's created the new normal for how independent groups and employed groups request time and how they actually book into the operating room. We've seen incredible uptake in this, and it's really the combination of these two tools together on the growth side, ATO and Time Finder, that it's been able to drive the incremental volume, the growth in 2 cases per OR per month, the increase of utilization of release time to upwards of 50%. That's all possible because you've got these two things working in tandem and creating the least frictioned way to access your operating room time. Jen, again, like, would love your context here. I know you've had a lot of experience with this.
You know, I have, and I reflect back on many conversations I've had with surgeons, but honestly, the key here, it is behind the scenes. The schedulers are the one with the ease of getting the patients fit into the schedule. The surgeons are just like, oh, wow, I didn't know how you were going about getting our cases in. I remember in particular, I was presenting at our hospital board. We were just giving them an update on this project and how excited we were with the work that we were doing. And our president of our medical staff is actually a surgeon. And she was on the board. And as I was explaining to them what we're doing, you know, the improvements it has made, she made the comment at the board meeting, I was wondering, I had a backlog of cases, and I was wondering how they were all getting in so easily. And yet again, this is not without opening new rooms. This is what we are filling the white spaces on that schedule through all of this optimization of the scheduling.
Yeah, I think really well said. And a super exciting part to see kind of create a whole new normal at the point that matters, right? You win and lose by what happens in the surgeon's office with their clinic scheduler. You win them, you create a new process there, that's where your volume comes from. All right, so the last piece of this that kind of pulls the package together is insights. And this is when we asked ourselves, how might we put real-time, transparent data at leaders' fingertips so they can manage accountability and have productive conversations with their teams? Because the OR resource, it's too precious. And both you and your surgeon, you need data, but you're both incredibly busy, and it's unacceptable that you should have to wait for a historical poll or transform in Excel not quite right reports or even hunt to figure out what's important to look at. I'm not trying to assume that you've got all this time to slice and dice. Who has that time? I want to curate those insights and deliver them directly to you. So that's what we did here with 2 different products. The first we call Opportunity Finder, and the second we call SPI. And I'll give you kind of a quick blink at what those look like. So here you are in Opportunity Finder, and I'm making available to you in real time to look across your operating room, to see your case volume and access, to see what the scheduling lead time is for your surgeons and how that lead time is changing, to see what utilization is in block and out of block and early release minutes and unused time, to be able to look at case scheduling accuracy, but then also be able to dig in and understand where should I start at the procedural level for the certain service lines? Are there ones where we need to actually focus on? Because look, 95% of their time, they're running long. And I want them to be able to break down robotics and actually understand that. All this is available at a lower leader's fingertips. And the same thing for your surgeons. Every single surgeon should have their own set of analytics. It should be available for them in real time. They should be able to see how their case volume is trending in their case minutes, where their backlog's at, how their lead time is progressing, how accurate they are in scheduling, how do they compare to other surgeons for that same procedure in duration of the surgery and how accurately they're scheduling, and also for them to be able to see how are you using your block time. This should never be an aha at the last minute at a block committee meeting. It should be right out there in front of them and easy for them to see. And that type of analytic should be the thing that enables you to have productive conversations. Look, I want to be on the surgeon side. I want to create a glide path for them to be successful and not be punitive. So instead of saying, look, I know our utilization goal is 75% and you didn't make it, I want to say, let's forget about that. I brought a technology in to make this stupidly simple for you to hit your goal. We nudged you 5 times in the last quarter. You accepted 2 of those times. Congrats. That is awesome. That boosted your utilization 12%. but you're only at 58% right now. All you have to do to get to your goal is actually have responded and trusted the system for the other ones. Had you done that and they were right on, you would actually hit 80% utilization and hit your goal. This is flipping the script here and making it so much easier to have that conversation with the surgeon. And then I think the last piece to really highlight here, you're seeing in this nudge, if it just stops at analytics, if it's just looking at their rearview mirror, we have failed you. Nobody has time to just look at those things and fix them all. You've got to be able to be proactive and develop algorithms on the fly that fix problems before they occur proactively. I think a great example of that is as you look at robotics. So we had robotic program directors coming to us across the board, all of them saying, look, as we look at the analytics for robotics, you've got 20 to 40% of non-robotics cases in robotics rooms. But what can you do about that? In reality, in the day-to-day, how can an algorithm fix that for you? Well, if you've built an architecture like ours, where you can pair together true AI algorithms in tandem, you can fix it. And that's what you're seeing here on the right. So let me show you how this works. You've got an AI algorithm that's first looking 6 weeks out on the schedule, anytime there's a non-robotics case booked in a robotic room. The second that happens, there's another algorithm that's looking at the same time, 24/7. When is there an available slot where I can move this case out and unfree up that time back in the robotic room? Second algorithm. But that's not enough. Remember, behavioral decision science matters. You've got to think about what matters for that, what's palatable for the surgeons. So you've got a third algorithm saying, okay, I've got to be able to predict with a 90% confidence that it won't delay the surgeon more than 10 minutes before I make a recommendation. All three of those come together, then all the orchestration happens proactively behind the scene. And so in this case, the scheduler for Dr. Norris, the OR director here, gets a nudge automatically 6 weeks out from surgery. Hey, look, there's this pelvic hematoma evacuation. It's clogging up, in this case, 255 minutes on your robot room. Super simple. You could move this case to either of these two rooms and unblock that without delaying the surgeon at all. Would you want to make that change? Yes, boom, time's available, goes back onto the schedule, and we start marketing it. That is a closed loop. That is fixing a problem before it occurs, and you don't have to do anything except pay attention to a nudge that is timely and actionable for you. I think the last kind of thoughts on this is just, I think this has got to be the new normal and the expectation, but Jane, would love kind of hear your thoughts on how this insights piece has worked for you.
The data for us is incredibly important, and I think any of us in healthcare, if we're trying to make change and have meaningful conversations with our physicians, it has to be a very data-driven conversation, which we've used this data for those meaningful conversations to reduce blocks if they're really not performing, and to make adjustments that we need to make. We use this data for our Surgical Excellence Committee, but also we share this data with our surgical governance physician leaders as well. It's very important.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jane. All right, so for the sake of time, I'm going to move through this kind of quickly, but this brings us to the newest area of innovation, our Market Insights module, which completes the picture of your perioperative business by going beyond what is available in your EHR. To be able to nimbly respond to the volatile environment, you need the most recent information possible from outside the four walls of your system. To that end, we secured exclusive access to a best-in-class national claims data set with more than 300 million covered lives and data on surgeries, referring providers, and patient access challenges. The data is tokenized at the source, which enables linking of disparate sources without transmitting any PHI. And instead of refreshes annually or quarterly, maybe at best, we receive updates monthly. So you're working off claims dropped as soon as 8 days ago. And let me show you a quick blink of what that looks like. Here's a glimpse of two of the products in this new module. Practice Optimizer is purpose-built for the surgeons to better understand their practice patterns and potential growth opportunities. We highlight providers referring the types of cases that they would love to do, who would most benefit from consolidating referrals to someone that they trust. We're also able to compare a surgeon's market position to other surgeons they care about in the market, and that's super exciting, and the surgeons we're working with love that they can see what happened just a few weeks ago and begin to take action immediately. This is like what surgeons tell me and my colleagues tell me they wanted yesterday. And then on the other side of that, at the market level, we have the insights provided here to help you compare health systems' market share and volume trends relative to other providers in the region. we can help you hone in on areas where your system is growing faster than competitors and the case types or services lines where your growth rates are lower than the other providers. You can then zero in on referral patterns by geography and identify regions from which you get fewer referrals. This is a really exciting area where we believe there's tremendous potential, and I know we're just scratching the surface of what's possible, so this is a fun area to stay tuned on for us. So now that we've talked about this, let me pull back for a minute. I'll turn it over to Jane, and Jane, you kind of walk through the impact, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing now, Abby, if you want to pick that up.
Sure, thank you, David. So at St. Luke's, we are excited by the impact that we are seeing so far. We're about 7 to 8 months into this project with Cuvetti, and we have already seen a meaningful release of new block time and the utilization of that block time. And that utilization is at 39.1%. The system has improved our lead time of release block as well, and we are now averaging a little over 14 days of that release block time. And if you notice on the slide, that's 8 days ahead of what the automatic default is. And as I shared earlier, you get into that 14-day window, physicians are able to actually make adjustments to schedules. They're able to get patients in for surgeries. And since the system has been deployed, we've been able to add over 920 new cases through this tool. Next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, one of our goals was to improve the released block time and that overall utilization. So through the Cuvetti system, we've unlocked over 562 hours so far, and this is increasing every month as we drive adoption and the use of the system. Our utilization of that release time is strong at 39%, which translates to over 220 hours of released block time that has been used from the system alone. Next slide. And since the deployment, we have really seen an acceleration of cases that are flowing through the Cuvetti system. In just the last month alone, we have seen more than 100 cases come through the system as engagement has increased across all of the surgical stakeholders. This is driving a great return on our investment, and we anticipate that the impact will only increase in the months to come. Next case. So at the end of the day, one of our main goals was to reduce that friction in our ORs, both internally with the complexity around scheduling cases and externally with the schedulers and the surgeons that are trying to get patients in. And we really feel like this tool has allowed us to accomplish this. Our schedulers have automation to streamline their communication, and cases are scheduled in a timely, easier, and more accurate manner. Our surgeons are proactively using the tool, and they feel that they see the benefits and are finding it is easier to get cases into our OR. Our staff benefit from the great accuracy in the scheduling, so it's making for a smoother workflow on the day of surgery, especially since we are experiencing staffing shortages today that are constraining things that we are able to do. And ultimately, it's getting patients into our ORs faster. And that's especially important now as we have gone through COVID and as we have this backlog of cases that we are continuing to work through. And you can see on the slide some of the quotes that we have heard, and there are many others. I think of the one that resonates right now is the anesthesiology director, that we were sitting in a surgical governance meeting, and as we were presenting our data, and this is anesthesiology, so they're all about optimization of the rooms because they want their resources working constantly. And he shared with the surgical governance that when we launched this, he had his doubts, he was skeptical about it, but he said it is actually working. And, you know, I don't have a single surgeon coming to me asking me to open rooms, but we do have surgeons doing more cases beyond their block allocations, and it seems to be working well. The other thing that we have found is, you know, as we've increased this volume, it has not been stressful for the staff. The staff do not feel like it's been a burden to them, so it shows that that has been very efficient through the flow. Dave, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I think on that point, you know, as we have done, that piece on staff, I think is like super critical. As we've done some time studies and started to look at call volumes. One of the clients, we were looking at this, and there was a 55% reduction in call volumes. Just think about that, what it means for those schedulers. When they had schedulers leave, they didn't backfill them because they had found increased efficiency. And then as we looked at the length of the calls went from like 13-minute calls on average to 2-minute calls. Why? All that pre-work and the enablement that's in the platform. And I think the last piece that was really interesting to us is as you started to look at drop calls, people that were on the phone just got tired of waiting and hung up the phone and probably took their case elsewhere. Huge reduction in the number of those calls happening, which again just speaks to making an easier interface. And so I think like as we pull back, I would definitely say the most rewarding part of our work has been the impact we've been able to have with our partners, like St. Luke's and others. And I think together we've been able to achieve significant and I think very sustained results that meaningfully augment their business. Partners are able to add 2 cases per OR per month, translating to 20 to 70 cases per month, which conservatively for a 20 OR hospital, that's hundreds of thousands of incremental margins, millions annually. And as an ROI, we think about when you're upwards on contribution margin on upwards of a 4-to-1 basis, and you could break even in a quarter of full launch, even for IT-strapped environments, which every one of our clients are in, it feels really doable and attainable on a quick basis. I think on top of that, we're finding that we're able to increase that lead time to release blocks to upwards of 7+ days, and then drive up utilization of that release time, which is really meaningful in filling the white spaces on the schedule. So I think before we transition to Q&A, I wanted to share some of the lessons that we have learned working with our health system partners. And the first thing I would say is you need to drive action for users. Unlike using passive predictions, AI and behavioral science should make it easy for your surgical stakeholders to take the right actions, such as releasing the blocks in advance or establishing a new referral pattern. Then you need to target strategic cases for growth. Instead of filling new open time with any available case, you should let ML and process automation make it easy to directly target the right cases that you need actually in the moment and for your environment, such as the strategic service line you want to grow, or the pressing care gap for the community that you want to fill, or the upcoming robotic surgeon that you really want to align with and you want to attract their business. And finally, you need to be able to strengthen relationships with your surgeons and teams. With real-time performance analytics, you can provide surgeons with insights and automation to grow and specialize their practice so they become the international brand surgeon and deepen their ties to your organization. That's the type of that is the type of analytics you can provide them that are meaningful to them, that matter to them, because it's helping them do what they most love to do. And I think the last piece that I would call out here is just closed loops. I mean, the day and age of having to look at a metric and figure out when you're going to find time to fix it, that should be in the past. There should be algorithms that are able to automatically, proactively fix things like non-robotics cases in robotics rooms, or predict when there's going to be a case delay that's going to cause a bunch of overutilization in your operating room, or predict things that cause problems ahead of when they occur, like predict who should be the first person that they should get first dibs on time on a first case start because they often start on time. These are the things that algorithms are really good at running in the background and fixing proactively if you think about how you pull those together with ML and behavioral science. With that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca for the Q&A portion.
Awesome. Great. So we have about 5 minutes left for Q&A. And so I think let's dive in. David, we've gotten actually a lot of questions around integration. So can you just clarify, does it integrate with Epic, and any other comments around that?
Yeah, so fully integrates. It fully integrates with Epic and with Cerner and other EMRs. So we sit on top of that system. We get near real-time polls. So you're looking at an interval of about 5 minutes. That all happens autonomously and synchronously into our system. We actually get a historical poll when we start, so we could start training the ML algorithms from day one, so they're ready to go when we start, and then it learns over time as we get your data. And then the bidirectional piece, that is something Cuvetti has already done in Epic on the different other sides of our business, and we're actively building. We'll be ready by the time any of you would go live, both in Epic and Cerner, a bidirectional interface to write the cases directly back into the EMR, to be able to do that, to be able to directly release the block. So that's part that's really exciting for us as well.
Thank you for clarifying that, adding some color. This next question here, this attendee asks, how do you get around a surgeon booking fake cases just to hold a spot?
Yeah, it's a great. Wait, hold on. Is someone assuming that sometimes surgeons don't always they game the system? Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah. So obviously, like if a surgeon can have bad behavior, they will have bad behavior, and so I'll own that. So what we do is we build checks and balances in, right? And so what happens is you've got an algorithm that says, okay, they said they were going to add a case, so we thought to ourselves, we got to build a quality check. Let's create an algorithm that's running in the background and saying, did they add a case? It's been 24 hours. We haven't seen a case drop. Should we nudge them and say, hey, do you still want to add a case? Or then we should just put that time back onto Time Finder, back into the queue, and start marketing it again. So you build those quality checks in.
Awesome, thank you. Kind of a related question, and I think you might have touched on it, but how does this question, attendee asked, how does it handle when a surgeon puts in a surgery will only take 2 hours, so it fits in a time slot, but based on past performance, we know it will take him 4 hours?
Yep. And again, something that we definitely had to plan around. And so we always give you the source of truth. So we want to create that flexibility for surgeons to indicate, maybe because of a patient's comorbidities, it may take longer. Obviously, they're going to probably say it takes shorter. But when your scheduling team gets a request, it always has two things. It has what they indicated the time would be, and it has our prediction of what the actual case length would be. So there is that truth in scheduling from the get-go. They can shorten the slot to try and find something, but you're always going to know from the get-go what was actually the prediction of that time, which I think is actually what you want. It gives you the flexibility to accommodate things if you want to be able to accommodate them, and for certain cases you want to be able to do that and make it work, but also it lets you understand like what the reality likely is to be.
Fantastic. Jane, turning this question to you. How did you convince your team to prioritize this initiative in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, actually, that was easy because that is, if there was ever a time you needed to prioritize what you're doing, it was through the pandemic because you had limited beds, you had limited resources. And so we had started this initiative during the pandemic and really launched it during the pandemic and found very quickly that the solution was helping us get the right cases into our ORs, which were limited at the time based upon the beds we had. So it honestly aided us in the pandemic to really prioritize the right type of patients that we were needing to focus on at that time.
Awesome, thank you. And I think we have time for about one more question, so I'll open this up to both of you, Dr. Tasha and Jane, and maybe Dr. Tasha, I'll start with you. So what are you excited about both going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think for us, the component of further reducing the work lift on teams by doing the bidirectional integration is something I'm super excited about. I think it's meaningful to actually like further reduce the amount of work on them. I'm really excited about the claims-based data. What you can do when you can start to see the other side of the business and actually what's going on in your market, that's super exciting to me. And then the third thing is thinking about the further applications of that AI-based algorithm to fix other problems in the operating room. So I think one of the neat things is like because we took the time and 10 years to build the architecture to do things like building the non-robotics algorithm, building the next algorithm is super easy. And so we're working on one right now around predictive staffing and predicting the demand for staffing to understand when you actually may be able to staff down or you need to staff up. Those are the things that get really exciting to us, and I'm really looking forward to on the horizon.
Awesome. And Jane, how about you?
You know, really quickly, I think my biggest excitement right now is taking this tool that we're using here at our tertiary quaternary center and pushing it out across the system. And how can we optimize our ORs, looking between our ORs, instead of just siloing our ORs, how can we optimize for our surgeons their ability to get cases in where it's best for those patients to get surgery?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Like, think about surgery. It is naturally has peaks and valleys at different systems. If one system you can predict is having a valley, how do you then use that marketing engine to fill it when someone else is having a peak? Now you create more stability across the system, and that's such a win that when you have a team that's there and staffed, but you have a bunch of downtime, let's move some of that volume from someplace that's totally chaotic and actually fill a gap on the schedule. That's great.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to close us out. So I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we don't. So that's all the time that we have for today. Jane, Dr. Tasher, thank you guys again so much for the excellent conversation and discussion. And also thank you, Cuvetti, for making today's webinar happen. Before we close out, attendees, just another final reminder, if you haven't already, you'll find additional resources and content on your dashboard, so make sure you download those. And then also, please, if you could fill out our session survey. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at future Becker's webinars.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jane.